online. While we do not have pretty blue boxes, free shipping on every order, or glamorous gold and silver infomercials, SD Bullion has the lowest prices that may save you hundreds on your next order. So before you make your next investment, do the math and join the over 40,000 new customers who have recently made the switch to SD Bullion. Why pay more?
This one is from Daryl Davis, and he wants to know, do you expect the U.S. to accept both the dollar vanishing and the ascendancy of the East without a single shot fired? If so, how will the U.S. become a third world nation while it's also possessing the most powerful arsenal in the world?
Well, let's just start with the first misconception. The United States does not have the most powerful arsenal in the world. This guy sounds like he's reading the New York Times too much or watching CNN too much. The U.S. has the largest sprawl of military bases, but no longer is the most powerful military. We've suffered 20 years of attrition, and we no longer have the best strategic weapons in the top 10 categories. So your premise is wrong. What's coming is what I believe, this is the name I've called it, the dual universe. It's going to be the U.S. dollar coexisting with the RMB of China. So the fellow asked in his question, how will the United States become a third world nation if we own a military? Excuse me? How are the sanctions against Russia working? Excuse me? How are the sanctions against Iran working? Excuse me? How are the trade friction and trade wars against China working out? You read New York Times and watch CNN too much, my good man. We're failing on all our foreign policy initiatives. Every single foreign policy initiative since Bush II, since 9/11, has been a massive failure. So when the global currency reserve is lost, that's when the pressures build, as I explained. But this gives me an opportunity to launch off in a bit toward the dual universe. Now, we're seeing the Saudis pressure Qatar. This is basically the petrodollar advocate of the Saudis attacking the Iran-Russian gas pipeline advocate in Qatar. How's that battle, even in the last 6 to 8 weeks? It's not escalated. We actually have the Saudis backing down. We have the Saudis finding no support among other Arab neighbors for attacks on Qatar. We have the Saudis now changing their demands toward suggestions. We now have the Saudis talking about contingency plans toward a more peaceful coexistence. What we have is a microcosm of Saudi versus Qatar, serving as a lesson on how this is all going to turn out on a macro stage. The macro stage is the U.S. government making some formal statements that if Eastern Hemisphere nations prefer to conduct trade in RMB terms, the Chinese currency, then that's fine. It's their own business. And that will essentially be the United States waving a white flag over the entire Eastern Hemisphere with respect to the global reserve currency structure and status. What they will be saying is, if two Asian or Eastern nations wish to conduct trade outside the dollar and banking outside the dollar, trade, payment, banking reserves, the two sides, always important for global currency reserve considerations, then the United States doesn't have a problem with it. They're going to make some arrogant, stupid-ass comment that the RMB is never going to go anywhere. But they'll be wrong because the RMB will continue very strong growth in trade payment usage, especially if the Saudis accept RMB from the Chinese and other Southeast Asian, Pacific Rim emerging market nations. And the United States will be wrong in another respect, because when they say the RMB will never turn into anything, they'll be wrong because they're going to eventually turn into a gold-backed currency. And I think it's going to merge with the Chinese adoption of the gold trade note, which will be a short-term trading vehicle with a gold equity margin put up front, settled in gold on a net basis. And the key point is a net basis. If two nations are doing gold-backed trading with respect to a gold trade note, then at the end of the year, end of the quarter, whatever the period of time is they agree upon, they will do net settlement. And if, for instance, Bolivia has a tremendous amount of shipments of industrial metal and silver, copper, etc., or Chile, and China has an enormous amount of shipments of cars, motorcycles, and home stereo equipment, whatever, and clothing, the net might be close to zero. And if it's not zero, it'll be settled in gold after that quarter of a year or full year. That's what net settlement means. Okay, so my point is that the U.S. is going to raise a surrender flag, a white flag, and it'll be visible to the eastern nations, as in the Eurasian Trade Zone, the One Belt, One Road community of nations. And they're going to say, you want to use RMB for trade and banking? Fine, go ahead. Okay, that's what I believe is coming, the dual universe. And I'd just like to back up my statement at the beginning of this response, where I said the U.S. is not a predominant military force. If we were a dominant and decisively dominant military force, would we not have won the Syria war by now? If we were the dominant military force, would we not have an inferior cruise missile when the Russians have the Tomahawk? I'm sorry, Tomahawk is the cruise. When the Russians have the Sunburn and Onyx missiles with 10 times more accuracy and triple the range? Would we be the dominant military force given that the Russians have and Chinese both have one generation more powerful electromagnetic pulse weapons that they've demonstrated twice with complete wreckages of U.S. naval vessels? Had to go back to the Chesapeake, completely burned out. Would we have dominant military power if the Russians, back with the USS Donald Cook 2 years ago, had the incidents where the MiGs or the Su fighter jets from the Russian military, Russian Air Force, there was an enormously important event. It was something like a group of 5 Russian jet aircraft circled the U.S. Donald Cook, disabled the U.S. military Aegis system, jammed it with an advanced jamming system, did flybys for the next 30 minutes, flipped the bird, did not attack the Donald Cook, and let it be known that they were vulnerable for half an hour for complete destruction and a death to 500 naval servicemen. The Russians did not pull the trigger. Okay, that was very well observed by the Pentagram, but apparently not observed by the person who wrote the question.
All right, well, moving now to our last viewer's question. This one is about cryptocurrencies. They're wanting to know, do you think cryptocurrencies and blockchains will replace the dollar? And if so, how will central banks and the Bank of International Settlements still have complete control over the system?
They cannot have complete control of the system. That's why the cryptocurrencies have been hatched. The entire structure of the cryptos is decentralization. The entire structure is designed to prevent central power in Basel and the US Fed and Bank of England. This is a very, very big topic, and I'm happy to say that I have solicited assistance from half a dozen very smart people who are well versed in this area. And they're supplying me information, they're answering my questions, engaging in conversations, and supplying me with reading material and viewing material. I mean, like articles and YouTubes. And I'm not up to speed yet. I'm an honest broker of financial and economic information analysis. I prefer to be an honest broker my entire career. I'm coming up to speed. I'm not there yet. I'm learning a lot, and I have learned a lot. But here are some of the things that I believe are the case. More than the cryptocurrency, the importance right now is of the blockchain. The blockchain with its smart contract features, with its encryption of the data. And I like to give an example so that people can understand this with something tangible. Early in the 2000 decade, there was something called MERS, the Mortgage Electronic Registry System. It was for storing titles for property and linking them with mortgage bonds. And it was probably the most fraudulent database in modern history because the titles were used for multiple mortgage bonds. The managers of MERS were Wall Street banks. And they like to explain that because of the rapid turnover of mortgage bonds, there was confusion in the MERS database. No, there was designed fraud and cover-up of the fraud with pretty much baseless explanations of why the errors took place. The MERS database was supposed to keep straight all the linkage of the secure streams from individual home mortgages with the compositions that they were part of in mortgage bonds. Like a mortgage bond would have a tranche with, say, 150 different individual mortgage streams, individual homes with payment structures. But the problem was the MERS database was revealed as showing that 2 to 3 different mortgage bonds were using the same title, the home, the same mortgage income stream. The fraud was unbelievable. If the MERS database had been a structured database within the blockchain, that would not have happened, and it would have been discovered in the first couple weeks, instead of having this flourish for 4 to 5 years and creating the subprime mortgage bond bust, the impact of which is still being felt almost 10 years later. Okay, the blockchain, this is my understanding, and it's still early learning period, but the blockchain would set up information items and lock them in the blockchain, encrypt them, put in the person who entered it and his identity, her identity, or the firm's identity, and move on to the next piece of the blockchain, which would be the sale of a mortgage bond. And that would encrypt the details for it, like the size of the bond, the issuer, like say Merrill Lynch, the value of the bond, the terms of the bond, like the interest rate at launch, the fee structure, and the individual titles within the mortgage bond for the secure stream. And then it would move on to the next item, I'm talking about the MERS database being part of a blockchain database structure to prevent fraud. But Wall Street prefers fraud, so they don't like blockchain. And that's where the threat lies. If blockchain flourishes with lots and lots of various contracts and structures for contracts, we're going to see Wall Street marginalized, because a new financial entity might come onto the scene saying we manage a lot of different blockchain smart contracts and we assure their validity, their honesty, their integrity, and Wall Street is cut out. The intermediary is cut out. And the cost structure goes down for managing it, while at the same time the integrity increases. This is why Wall Street is probably going to employ the Langley whiz kids to hack into it, like to steal wallets. If someone were to ask me what is the weakest link in cryptos and blockchain, I would say the wallets, because they live on the fringe. Now, they could be encrypted and kept safe, but if novices are involved, they might not be kept very safe, and they might live on the fringe in a way that can be hacked more easily than others. If someone were to ask me, what's the biggest threat right now to the crypto space, I would say quantum computers. Now, I come from a computer science background, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what a quantum computer is. All I have concluded is that it's a powerful supercomputer with various internal features, like the central processing might be multi-array, that sort of thing, multi-bus, multi-array. And what is the advantage of a quantum computer? Well, they could break down a 256-bit encryption pretty easily. They can possibly break down 1024-bit encryption over time. You know, get the quantum computer to work hard for a good 3-week, 6-week period, and it could probably break the encryption of a 124-bit code. Okay, so we're going to have a battle with the encrypted space for both currency and blockchain contract constructions. We're going to have a battle. And the battle is going to be Wall Street plus Langley with their quantum computers battling against the encryption. Because if they could break the encryption of a lot of wallets with a flimsy 256-bit encryption and steal the wallet contents like they did a few weeks ago, they can undermine the confidence of the system. But what they'll end up doing is they'll force the system to make better encrypted wallets. That's my theory. They're going to move quickly up to 512 for bits in the encryption and make it more difficult. But, you know, people can do smart things like, you know, have a devoted little USB drive on the side to hold their contents. This is part of what I'm learning. I mean, I'm an honest broker. I will admit what I don't understand. I'm trying to understand how the wallets are kept safe and how they're kept out of the ecosphere where they can be attacked by the more powerful computers and decryption machines. Because believe me, when I say that Langley has some of the smartest people and some of the most powerful computers that narco money can buy. They've been funding their black bag ops for a long time. And now they're funding entire armies. It's called ISIS. If you run out of your standard Pentagon budgets for military endeavors and adventures, then turn to your Bush narco arena with its several hundred billion in profit per year. There is over $800 billion in revenue coming from Afghanistan heroin per year alone. Okay, so the crypto space, that's what I call it, crypto. I mean, it's more than a business. It's an area of research. It's an area of development. I just got an email this morning from someone who said, isn't the entire crypto space a central bank initiative? And I said, no, it's the exact opposite. This is an attempt to set up currency for movement across borders. I mean, I've got a client who said to me, Jim, you know, I live in Argentina and I've got a U.S. bank account and I move money from my U.S. bank account into Bitcoin and then I undo the movement from Bitcoin into my Argentine bank account and I don't need central bank approval to do it. I said, wow, that's kind of neat. I need to learn more about that. And I am learning more about that. But I'm not an expert yet. When I feel like an expert, I will claim that I am a low-level expert, but I'm not there yet. The crypto space is going to see attacks. They're also going to see Trojan horses. One of the funniest stories I heard, pardon me, a little while ago, was that JP Morgan developed a crypto coin. Pardon me. I need a little water. JP Morgan invested $200 million in a new crypto coin, but it was centralized with JP Morgan maintaining control. I mean, this is so ridiculous. I don't even want to come up with an analogy of how stupid that is. But they wanted centralized control of their cryptocurrency, which violated one of the two main rules. One rule is it's decentralized. The second is that it's encrypted for its data. Okay, so a few weeks passed. They had an IPO launch, an ICO, initial coin offering launch, and the value went quickly to zero. you just gotta laugh at stuff like this. Well, now there's a new crypto initiative that I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I will know more before the August report is posted. It's not posted, it's being written right now. But the new SDR, digitized asset with their ACC database, or whatever it is. I honestly, I can't remember what ACC stands for. I'm trying to learn about it. I'm doing some other work, and I'm kind of circling this wagon right now with the SDR crypto initiative. But they're trying to digitize assets, and they've got an initial stage of where they're doing it in Texas. Like there's some property that's being digitized, meaning their titles are being put in the form of a blockchain. And it's a test case. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I hope it reveals some of the fraud. Because wherever the IMF and the banker cabal is involved, they have two main features that always show up: central power and fraud. And I'm looking to see where the fraud is, because I can already see where the central power is. The central power is in their blockchain to hold the digitized assets, the titles. And I'm thinking that they're going to try to enable some super level of title ownership of all Western property assets. Kind of like the lords of England who own all the property, and you don't buy a home, you buy a 100-year lease from the lords who own all the property in London and England. Okay, that's what I'm sensing. I'm sensing that they're going to put in the London Lord property feature in their SDR title database for property. But I'm looking into that. I don't think their SDR is going to be successful, their new SDR, because it's centralized and because the custodians are not trustworthy. but I'm learning about it, and I'm soliciting opinions from my jackass team. We got, 8 or 9 big brains, and it's nice to have multi-processing on some of this. You put 8 or 9 big central processors together, like in the old days, big VAXs for digital equipment, and you get a cluster, and the cluster is very powerful, and you get multiplicative benefits from putting the processors together. And that's what I think has come to pass with the hat-trick letter. The opinions of The Voice and London Paul and Euroraj and Rob Kirby and others now, like Sky Crane, who is turning out to be a very proficient student of the cryptocurrencies and a beneficiary of some of its growth and value. I don't want to get personal, but he and I have lunch once in a while, and he explains some things. So he's turning out to be something of a mentor, not in any big, full-fledged fashion, but I want him to become in a bigger role as a mentor for the crypto space, because he's very knowledgeable and explaining to me why Ethereum is not so vulnerable with respect to required learning of a specific language. And anyway, he goes on and explains, no, that's not a weakness, Jim. Don't worry about that. So I'm not going off in a wrong direction for a construct for one of the crypto's weaknesses. Very, very interesting. So what else can I say about cryptos? They're not going away. They're going to grow. They are with the potential to put a very deep wound, I don't want to say kill, a very deep wound in the London and Wall Street banking financial services center. I mean, like, say, bond issuance. Just for instance, just that. Bond issuance. Suppose that gets taken away and ends up in something, I'll just throw it out, in some firm that builds upon the Ethereum platform. Okay? That would be very interesting, because its integrity would not be questioned like Wall Street. How many lawsuits have been completed with settlement for Wall Street banks in just the last, say, 15 years? The total settlements is over $280 billion for fraud. Okay, that has provided the impetus for developing the crypto space, for making smart contracts. The beauty of the smart contract is not just that it's smart, it's that it's honest and enforceable. Honest, transparent, enforceable, and verifiable. And that's where some of the power lies.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jim. Did you want to quick share with the viewers where to find you online?
It's www.goldenjackass.com. It's been just about 13 and a half years now. It's been a labor of love. I keep saying that. I love this work, even though there's not a lot of statistical analysis in there. I miss the days of taking a giant database and having some important questions to answer and 6 weeks to do it. I love that, but I don't have that opportunity. I've taken my marketing research background and method of thinking and turned it into the bank analysis, currency analysis, and gold world analysis. Now I'm going to turn it to the crypto space analysis. And the result is the hat-trick letter. This month is going to be month number, I'm looking at the calendar, 161. Issue number 161. That's a long time. I remember when I first met Kurt Rickenbacker in Cannes on the French Riviera, I said, Kurt, how many monthly issues do you have? And he said, oh, I'm up to 245. Okay, that's a long time. Well, I'm more than half that now, and it's been a long time. I'm going to be an old geezer when I hit 200 months. Well, that's not quite the case. When I hit 300, I don't know what the world's going to look like if I hit 300 months, but the monthly newsletter, pardon me, comes in 2 parts. It's a global money war report, and just for the long-term subscribers, walk down memory lane. It used to be called the Macroeconomic Report. Now it's called the Global Money Report. Okay, the other report is called the Golden Currency Report. And that has really not changed much, except in the last 2 or 3 years, I've including a chapter on the development of the Eurasian trade zone. Because I always had petrodollar issues, oil issues in the Golden Currency Report because the petrodollar was a currency construct. Okay, so there are two main reports, and there is some common ground. I mean, sometimes one report is longer than the other, and I just move a section regarding European banks into the other report. All right, so they're not defined and strict content. There are 2 reports per month, and I try to divvy it out, divide it into two sides. Okay, the main web page, main 5 HTML, it contains free content. It's in the public domain. It has the interviews with links. It has the public articles, which I'm writing more of. I'm trying to write more public articles and shorter ones, particular theme, like recent ones having to do with the fraudulent Saudi arms deal. It was just hocus pocus, a lot of hand movement, like the advent of the natural gas cartel to replace the petrodollar and OPEC. What is the petrodollar's cartel? It's OPEC. OPEC has enforced the dollar standard for a long, long time with its leader, Saudi. Okay, another public article was just about the global currency reserve, what it meant and what the risks were for losing it and how we might lose it. And that's why the Chinese purchase of Saudi oil and RMB term payment comes about. So I'm writing more public articles. I continue to do the interviews. I love them. They're a lot of fun. They're actually more fun than writing public articles. I'm busy writing the main hat-trick letter. So my fingers are already tired from typing with the hat-trick letter. So I don't like doing much in the public article. That's why I'm doing shorter ones. So I hope people go to www.goldenjackass.com, bounce around, sign up. And 2 compliments I'd love to mention are I was away from the hat-trick letter for a couple of years, and I'm back. I wish I'd never left. The other compliment is I've been relying on your podcast for the longest time, and I recently signed up, curious about what the report involves, and I wish I'd signed up long ago. So those are very nice compliments to get. But I'm getting, more than a few in the last year. I lost my job. And it's hard to see. And what it means is the U.S. economy is accelerating in the recession. You can make an argument that we've been in a depression for quite a while, and I think the actual existence of quantitative easing and bond purchase, aka hypermonetary inflation, I think that is in response to the immediate threat of a depression. So take it away, you get the depression. We've been in a depression, a quasi-depression now for 6 years. Don't believe this 5% unemployment figure. It's more like 23. And lots of data to back that up, like the participation rate. 1 minus the participation rate is the unemployment rate, people. Wake up. What I'm saying is if they claim that we have a 65% participation rate, then we have close to a 35% unemployment rate. But to be sure, there are some people who are, infirmed, sick, just can't work, or in school, or just Mr. Mom at home raising kids, or just doing something with an agreement with the spouse, whatever. Anyway, we have at most a 35% unemployment rate. I think it's 22% because that's what John Williams of the, what's it called, Shadow Government Statistics claims. And he also follows the CPI in an accurate description. And I love the Chapman CPI, which a couple of years ago came out to show that it's between 8 and 10% for urban America. All right, so go to goldjackass.com website and bounce around, sign up for the newsletter, and getting a lot more interest in the newsletter in just the last couple of months. And I'm a little curious why. And I believe it's the rise of the cryptos and the more imminently perceived end of the dollar with its global currency reserve. That's my opinion. In other words, the end of the king dollar reign of terror. It's going to be a multi-step decline. So thanks for having me on, Elijah. It's been fun as usual.
All right. Once again, Jim Willie, editor of the Hat Trick Letter, found on goldenjackass.com. Thank you so much for your time today.